So what happens when what you believe runs smack into what the law says? We're about to dive into this really fascinating case that's all about that exact problem, religious freedom versus civil marriage laws. It's a story with two wives, one husband, and a legal fight that went all the way to the Supreme Court of the Philippines.
Here's the big question. Can you legally get married twice in the Philippines? I mean, it seems like a simple question with a simple answer, right? And usually that answer is a big, fat no. But what if your religion says something different? What if it allows for more than one wife? Well, one man's story brought this exact issue to the forefront, creating a legal puzzle so tangled up, only the highest court in the land could even begin to sort it out. And that brings us to the case of Nollora versus the people of the Philippines. This is what our whole explainer is about today. We're going to unpack all of it, the facts, the arguments, and the really important ruling that came out of this legal showdown. Okay, first things first, let's look at the facts that nobody was arguing about. Both sides pretty much agreed on what happened. The real fight was over what it all meant legally. And this whole thing kicks off with two different marriage certificates for the very same man. The prosecution laid out a timeline that was just crystal clear. First, on April 6, 1999, Atilano Nollora Jr. gets married to Jesusa Pinat Nollora. Fast forward just a little over 2 years to December 8, 2001, and he marries Rowena Geraldino. And here's the kicker. That first marriage was never, ever legally dissolved.
Now this is where the paper trail gets really interesting. You've got the official records right here from the National Statistics Office, and yep, they confirm both marriages. But look closer at that second marriage certificate. See what he put for his civil status? Single. Now you can bet the prosecution saw that and thought, aha, this is a key piece of the puzzle right here.
So with all these facts on the table, you've got a first marriage that's still going and then a second marriage. The prosecution filed charges for a very specific crime, bigamy. So what in the world is bigamy? Well, according to Article 349 of the Revised Penal Code, it's pretty simple. It's the crime of getting into a second marriage before your first one has been legally ended. The law is really straightforward on this, one spouse at a time.
Now, to get a conviction for bigamy, the prosecution had to prove 4 things. Number 1, Nollora was legally married to Jesusa. Check. Number 2, that first marriage was still valid. Check. Number 3, he went and got married again, this time to Rowena. Check. And number 4, that second marriage had all the legal boxes ticked to be considered valid on its own. I mean, based on the paperwork, it seemed like a slam dunk.
But, this is where the story takes a really dramatic turn. Nollora didn't really argue with the facts. Instead, he came up with a defense that wasn't based on civil law at all, but on his own personal religious beliefs. Nollora's argument was, in a way, pretty simple, but it had huge implications. He said, hey, I converted to Islam way back, and my faith allows me to have more than one wife. So, in his mind, his religious beliefs should give him a pass on the whole bigamy charge.
And that question became the absolute heart of this entire legal battle. Could a person's religion actually exempt them from a criminal law that's supposed to apply to everyone? This is what the Supreme Court had to figure out.
All right, so this slide really gets to the core of the conflict. The court was looking at 2 different sets of rule books. On one side, you have the family code. It's for civil marriages, and it's super strict. One spouse, that's it. On the other side, you have the Code of Muslim Personal Laws, which, under certain conditions, does allow a man to have more than one wife. So which rule book do you follow? Well, funny enough, the answer was kind of hidden inside the Muslim code itself. There's this little section, Article 13.2, and it's a real game changer. It says that if a marriage involving a Muslim isn't done with Muslim rights, then guess what? You default back to the family code. It's like a built-in instruction manual. So, faced with this clash of laws, the Supreme Court came back with a super clear answer. And in doing so, they clarified exactly how these two legal systems work together, setting a huge precedent for cases down the road. Here it is, the key takeaway from the court's decision. They didn't even get into a debate about his faith. In fact, they basically said his religion wasn't the issue at all. What mattered, they said, wasn't what he believed, but the legal type of ceremonies he chose to have. The court laid out its thinking very clearly. It went like this. Both of Nollora's marriages were civil ceremonies. That puts him squarely under the family code. Neither one followed Muslim rights, and he never even wrote down that he was Muslim on the official paperwork. The way to think about it is this. If you choose to play a game on a soccer field, you've got to follow the rules of soccer. You can't just pick up the ball and start running like it's basketball, right? In this case, the soccer field was civil law, and its main role is one wife. End of story. So this ruling wasn't just about this one man's situation. It was about setting down a really important legal principle for a country with many different faiths, where different legal systems can sometimes overlap.
And this right here is the ultimate lesson from the Nollora case. The law doesn't really look at your personal faith to decide the rules for your marriage. It looks at the ceremony you chose. By picking a civil ceremony, you are choosing to be governed by civil law, no matter what you privately believe.
The Nollora decision gives us one very clear answer to this question, but it also kind of leaves us thinking about this complicated, ongoing conversation between the government and all the different faiths of its people. It really shows that while you're free to believe what you want, you're not always free to act on those beliefs if they clash with the laws you've chosen to live under.